And Hayley, I promised a video on how to make a brisket using your brand new Weber Smokey Mountain smoker. And so today's the day. It's 4th of July weekend. I've got about a 13-pound brisket sitting here that I picked up from Costco. Prime, of course, very important. And then
Why?
Prime, it has the best fat distribution throughout the muscle, so you're going to get the juiciest and most tender compared to if you go with select or choice beef. And in this case, too, you have to factor in that you're going to have to cut some of this fat back off. You want to leave about a 1/4 inch of fat coming off the muscle here, but this is too much. It's much more than a 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to cut this off now, and then once we do that, we'll season it, and then we'll get it on the grill after it tacks up. Yeah, so I'm just gonna cut these big pieces of fat off. These won't render in the smoker, and they're not gonna taste very good when you eat them, if they've been smoked. So prevents smoke from getting to the meat as well. So it's really important that we trim this fat. We don't wanna throw this fat away. What we're gonna do is we're gonna end up throwing this on a pot, and this is gonna go overnight as well. We're smoking this brisket at 6:38 p.m. Is when I'm getting this thing started. It's gonna go overnight. I'm gonna tend to it in the morning and get it situated. So at the same time, this fat will be turned into tallow, and we're going to use that to rehydrate the beef or redistribute juices throughout the beef after it's been pulled off and it rests. So that's what we're doing now. And then we're also going to want to separate any like funky things we see on the brisket. Like, let's see if I can find anything. A bit of grayness here. We froze this and thawed it. That's going to have to come off and get thrown in the trash.
The bowl's in the way.
What's that?
The bowl's in the way.
The bowl's in the way. Well, that ain't gonna work. Yeah, so we'll cut that off, and then we're gonna cut some of these edges off and sort of square it off. One limitation about the Weber is this brisket might be a little too wide to fit on the tray, so it is important that we sort of slice off some of the edges here. We're gonna round this off, and then that'll allow it to sit a little bit better. As the meat cooks, it will contract. And it'll pull away from the sides and into the center. That's true, but you'll end up burning these edges. That still may be unavoidable given the Smoky Mountain, but the meat in the middle here, 90% of this is going to turn out awesome. So we'll go forward with that in mind. But for instance, this piece is going. So just continuing to slice these pieces off. These will cook down, like I said. And then usually like sharpen a knife, and then really you want to slice into the fat a little bit and then pull like that and pull away as you're slicing. And that's going to get your best strips, and it's also the safest way to do it. This nice pull slip around. The fat doesn't really fight back the way it needs to, so you got to be careful as you're doing this. All right.
Gross.
All right. Am I going?
Yeah.
Okay, sick.
Burp and all.
So I've trimmed. You can see how much fat has come off of this, and then here's like pieces of beef that I don't want to keep anymore. So pieces of the edge, things that maybe got damaged or are going to look a little jagged and they won't cook evenly, and so it's just best to cut them off, round this thing off. I wanted to show you, this is the top of the brisket. I'm basically done with this. I've left about a 1/4 inch of fat on the top of this. And you can see, just cut the edges off, was really diligent about making this like a nice smooth surface. And then I cut into this area too, a decent amount. And you can see this is fat. What's really going on here is these are two different muscles. You have the flat part here, and then this big fat divider, and then this is the point. Your flat part's gonna be more lean. This will be your juicier one. And so what you can do is you can cut into this and shape a lot of that fat out, and then both sides will cook a little more completely. This is fat that just won't render, again, like we talked about. So you can get a nice amount of that out and sort of excavate, and it'll just speed up your process. The other thing that we're looking out for is on the backside, our silver skin. So what I'll do is I'll take a paper towel. Silver skin is just a membrane that goes over the muscle. It's nasty and it's not right, so we want to get that off. So what I've done is I've found a little bit of silver skin going with the grain of the muscle here. I'm going to hold the end with a paper towel. I made an incision, and then I'm going to cut down at about a 30 to 45 degree angle somewhere in there. And I'm just going to keep getting under that silver skin. Hopefully I can get a nice big complete strip of it. So I'll try that again because it is subject to tearing. You can see maybe that's all I get, but it's on right here through this whole side. So we just want to make sure we're getting as much of that off as possible. Don't be afraid to work the angles here.
MySpace angles?
Oh, hell yeah. There you go. It might seem like we're cutting a lot of beef off, but I mean, we are, but also making this worthwhile. This is gonna be really good. Trimmed brisket. You can see clearly the two pieces of brisket. When we're ready to slice this, we'll divide that up. Right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a binder on, and then we're gonna season this bad boy. So for binders, you can use whatever you want. Some people use olive oil. Some people do water. I think that's really weird. Some people do mustard.
Worcestershire sauce.
I do, yeah. I've done them all except for water, and like it really doesn't matter. Whatever you put is gonna lose its flavor. It's not where the flavor of the beef is coming from. It gets really overpowered during the smoking. I have nitrile gloves. I don't know why I chose to do it this way, but you're gonna cover this whole thing with mustard or whatever you choose, right? And then we're gonna get the seasoning on, and the goal of getting the seasoning on is to get it to tack up on this brisket, and you want to, that's what's going to form, Jesus. It's what's going to form your really nice bark that you want on the brisket. As it cooks, it'll darken up nice, especially if you use a lot of black pepper. And so, yeah, so there's the deal. Get it on. Okay, great. Delicious. And nutritious. Okay. Before we start.
I started already.
Okay. So, trimmed up the brisket, put mustard on it. We're ready to bind.
Wait, why did you put mustard on it?
Mustard, you can put anything on there really to bind. What we want to get is our seasoning binded to the brisket. We want it to tack up. It's going to make a nice bark on the brisket. So mustard is generally accepted principles. You can also use Worcestershire. You can use olive oil. Some people just use water. But you need some sort of liquid really to bind this seasoning to this in the way that you want it to. So I go with mustard because it's readily available, very cheap, and the flavor doesn't show up at the end product. So I'm just gonna spread it generously. I'm gonna make a mess. This is salt, black pepper, fresh peppercorn. You gotta like freshly break it up, and then granulated garlic. Very basic. And so in Texas, they just do the salt and the pepper, and that's generally what I like to do. But you know, I don't want to really overpower the flavor of the beef, but I kind of got attracted to this idea of adding garlic powder or garlic powder as well. It's going to be a mess. It's always a mess. So I was making too much of a mess, so we had to do a second take. But I was saying, this seasoning is just black pepper, salt, and then granulated garlic. We're going to get it in there nice and liberal-like, and then try to pat it in. Again, we're trying to let the moisture of the mustard and the meat absorb a lot of this salt and a lot of this black pepper. And the black pepper is going to give it that nice dark crust that you want to see, or I keep calling it crust, but it's really a bark. We can take this seasoning and sprinkle it on our meat. There you go.
How much seasoning did you make to cover?
I made a shitload of seasoning, and then this can always be reused. So we'll keep this, and then I'll like bag up what I don't have left over here, and then we'll use that for another cook another time. But I'm always in the business of making my own rubs based on whatever I have on hand. All right, so this is about what it should look like when it's done. Lift it up and like minimal falling off. We're gonna let this sit on a rack now and tack up. That's what we want. We let it go for probably about 30 minutes to an hour. I'm using a baking pan because off to my left I have pork shoulder that's also going to sit on the Smoky Mountain at the same time that I'm doing this. So the pork shoulder sitting over there tacking up. This is going to tack up in this ill-fitting pan, and then later we'll go ahead and we'll throw them both on the Smoky Mountain at the same time.
Why do you want to elevate it?
Because I don't want it to get soggy on the bottom. I don't want the juices from the mustard or from the meat to come down and sort of morph into this pool here. So this can go in the trash. Probably it's touched other meat, so I'm not really fond of putting it on other stuff or keeping it around. You can. It doesn't matter to me. And then, yeah, this will just tack up and it'll kind of dry up on all sides instead of getting soggy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get the grill going now. The grill, once we get it going, is awesome. Very easy to keep it at the correct temp because we're doing brisket and pulled pork today. I'm gonna try to keep it at 225. And that's gonna probably have to go for about 14 to 16 hours if I had to guess. So again, right now it's about 7:30 now. So we would expect this to be done cooking between 9:30 and 11:30 tomorrow morning. Give us a time to rest and we'll slice it and we'll head to our thing at 2. It's okay, don't make faces at me. So first things first, this thing works by charcoal sitting in the bottom here. So what I'll do is I'll show you, I've got my different grates out. We've got this ring here. This ring is supposed to help position the coals and then keep them away from the side, and that's going to bring oxygen through these holes into the coals, and that's going to create a vacuum through the top of the, you can see these holes here, right? And that hot air is going to go over your meat. That's how it cooks. So the smaller we make these holes, the more we can reduce the airflow and therefore less fuel to the coals, less heat.
Okay, stop.
So with a traditional cook, like if I was gonna make hamburgers out on the grill and I needed the coals to be hot for an hour, I would just take my charcoal chimney here and I'd fill it up about, 80% of the way, and I just squirt it with lighter fluid and good to go. Don't have to use lighter fluid, but I just like using it. For this method, what we're gonna do is we only wanna have a little bit of heat in here, not raging hot cook steaks heat. We want low and slow. So I'm gonna flip this thing over and stack the coals on this side. It's gonna give me less coals here than with a traditional one. All right, so the other thing is like, I'm gonna so I'm sticking coals in there, and then I'm gonna stick my backup coals in here. And what my plan is I'm just gonna go around and I'm gonna stack them in a ring, sort of. I'm gonna use nearly a full bag here. And then I'm gonna push them out towards the sides and sort of create a cavity in the middle, okay? Why am I doing that? We're gonna heat up a subset of those coals in here, and I'm gonna stick them in the middle. Now those will burn at a constant temp, but as they start to wear out, the heat will spread out to the periphery of the fire. You'll keep it sustainably on. Lighter fluid. I'm sure there's somebody out here who will tell you not to do this, but it's not me. I like lighter fluid as a starter. What I don't like is messing around with matches, so I've got this little butane torch, and I'm just gonna, we're done. Okay, so now we're gonna let that go for about 10 minutes. Those coals, they'll burn, then they'll get hot once the fire dies down, and once they're glowing, we'll stick them into the center here. And so that'll work for that. Okay, now we can get the rest of the grill ready. So what do I mean by that? So the grill typically looks like this, right? Inside you've got this bowl. It may not be obvious what this is for. This is for water. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna act as a heat shield. So we don't want any of that heat from the coals that are gonna be sitting here to be blasting our meat from up top. Instead, we wanna kind of give it this barrier. I said 3/4 of the way, but I only went halfway. It doesn't really matter. The other thing is, so now the next thing is one grate will slot in directly above that. That's gonna be my pulled pork grate. Pulled pork is a really forgiving meat. It's why we can just sort of throw one on when we're doing a brisket. This cook is gonna be tailored to a brisket, but we can also just get a pulled pork out of here. And it's a crowd pleaser, not everyone loves brisket, but everybody loves pulled pork or brisket. So we'll stick the pulled pork on the middle grate, and then the brisket is gonna sit right at the top here. Boom, we'll do it like that. The other thing we can do is we can start throwing down some wood chunks into the path of these coals. So these will burn up over time, and we'll have that like delayed and serialized release of smoke. I'm using up all my hickory, but I don't have, and that's like a preferred one, especially for the type of cook we're doing. And when you're doing beef and pork, hickory is good. And then if we need more, I have mesquite. We're gonna see about that. It's probably not the best combination, but if I'm feeling desperate for smoke, that's what I'll do. White hot, smaller assortment of coals. Just gonna get them down here. Drop those boys right in the center. All right, done. This is hot. I'm gonna set it aside. Don't touch. Okay. Next order of business is we're gonna take this compartment, and I want it with the hatch. Be careful not to spill the water on these coals. Oh, Oh shoot. All right. Okay. It's not on there, correct? So give it a second. What the fuck is going on? Okay, cool. Holes are hot. Smoke is getting in. A couple things we want to do. Okay, deck's facing this way, so I oriented this so I can walk out from the door, come here to open this up, and check on. The smoke is burning, that's what's coming out. But we can check on what's going on and add more coals through that hatch if my fire is dwindling, or I could stoke it and get it going. You can also piecemeal add more chunks to the fire as well. All right, so last step before we get the meat going, we want to open up these hatches. This is open all the way on the top, and then this is only open part of the way. So we're going to open that all the way, get as much oxygen in here, get those coals hot enough, get this thing up to 225. Once it's at 225, we'll tamp these down to about a third open on each side. Okay, so the last thing before we put the meat on, is we gotta get this thing hot. So we're gonna get it to the right temp, and then it's sort of a set it and forget it situation. So I've got the holes here, 100% open, and the holes down here, 100% open. So as much oxygen as I can give it is going. This is gonna heat up to 225, and when that happens, I'll reduce the openings to 1/3 open, both of them. Okay. Grill's at 225, 230. Want to keep it really between 225 and 250 for the duration of the cook. So that's why we're tamping these down to about 1/3 of the way open. Top rack, I've got my brisket going. You can see the smoke is coming up over the top. And then on the second rack, like I told you earlier, we got that pork shoulder in. So those will go. We're gonna check back on them in a little bit. I'm gonna keep taking the temperature of that brisket and check it in, but we're gonna let this go until it's about 165, 175. All right, so skipped a lot of steps as far as filming goes. Put the brisket on last night around 8 p.m. Pulled it off of the grill at about 3:30. It hit about 175 internal, and that's a proper time to wrap it or pull it at least from the grill and start protecting it from that heat. What I did is we took that tallow, that beef tallow, and cooked it down. I distributed that over the top of the brisket and created an aluminum foil boat and let the brisket sit on there with that tallow. And the goal is to open up the pores inside of there and open up the cells and just let that moisture redistribute through. And then the other thing too is once the brisket hits 145, it stops taking on smoke. So there's not much benefit to leaving it on the grill. So I stuck it in the oven instead and cheated. Set the oven to 275, and then I have a Bluetooth thermometer that was able to tell me, okay, it's at 205 internal. Came in and tested it, poked it, it kind of moved like jelly. We knew it was good to go at that point. So I wrapped it in a towel here and stuck it in my cooler after it hit 205. So you can see here it is wrapped. You can see the shape all nice. And then now it's been about 4 hours. Those juices have redistributed. I hit it with more beef tallow after I pulled it off the oven, and now we're getting ready to slice. All right, so there's the brisket after we're done. You can see a little bit of caked up crust there. That's okay. Again, we poured beef tallow all over this, and now I'm gonna cut it. Remember, all right, so let's look at our shape, right? So this is where we were trimming. This is that fat side, and remember we carved out a lot of the fat that was in this area. This is the separation between the point and flat. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna slice off the point here. Some people will just cut straight through. That's more like an Instagram, like showmanship thing. It's really a bullshit way to cut this thing. What you wanna do is get your knife up underneath here, and this will provide a nice guide for you to separate those two muscles. And again, this is gonna be your juicy one right here, and this will be your more lean one. And they kind of work in balance with each other when you're setting up a plate. So I'm gonna get those cut up and we'll talk about it. All right. So I'm doing this all by myself because my lovely helper over here, she's very busy too. It's the 4th. We got stuff going on. So things I wanted to point out about this brisket are, it's because we've smoked it to 205. What the goal there was to break down all this collagen. So as you can see, see how it kind of gives that jiggle to it, and then when I press in, it has a lot of give to the brisket. That's an indication that it's truly done. So now we're gonna go ahead and slice it. I just wanted to point that out too. Okay, gotta get one of these cool brisket slicing knives. They're gonna help majorly. So what we're gonna do is, remember I cut all that fat out earlier. It seemed like an unnecessary step, but now this serves as a nice guide for me to just slide my knife in. Oh, hell yeah. Now look at that. Clean cut off of there. We're gonna set that aside. Over there, I think, is a good spot for it. And then we'll start slicing this point. So this is gonna always be your toughest part, especially on the Smoky Mountain, just because this is close to the periphery. So this is really dog food up here. But as you move closer to where this fat was, over here, this is gonna be your better cut of this meat. So we're just gonna get into it. You can see it's sort of falling apart here. It's almost shredding. There's a nice flavor on that. It could have some more juiciness, but again, this is the leaner part, so not terribly surprised that it's a little dry. It's not overly dry. True confession, when I went to go pull this out of the oven today, it wasn't at 205, it was at 212, so I was kind of worried about that. But hoping the beef tallow solution would solve some of that for me as well. So just going to continue slicing this. Okay, all right. Okay. What we're looking for is for this to sort of fall apart. I want to show you specifically. This like breakage here is really what we're looking for. Just when you rest it on your finger. We don't want it to fall apart completely, but we do want to start sort of separating on its own. Shit, that might be a little over. All right, now I'm slicing the point, and this is why everyone loves brisket in the first place. So I'm gonna get in, show you this bad boy. That's the slice that we're kind of looking for. And here you can see like this thing is almost like a slinky, really falling apart. So lovely, well juiced. The granulated garlic adds a ton of flavor here. It turns black, the crust does, because of the black pepper in there. But when I put it on, it looked almost ghost white. Really didn't look like there was much pepper at all involved. But that cook is really gonna wear on that pepper. So you don't have to over pepper it. That's what I have found I've done in the past. I've had a lot of not success and bad commentary on. So just a heads up, you don't need as much pepper as you might think you do. I don't know, just don't overdo it with the pepper. But you definitely need some presence. All right, brisket is sliced. I want you to take a look at this. So we cut off that back end here. We could do burnt ends with these pieces. Sorry, I suck so much at holding the camera. Could do burnt ends with these pieces. I don't feel like firing up the grill anymore. We're about an hour and a half from the party, so it's a little early to slice, but I couldn't hold into it anymore without considering food safety issues. So sliced it, we'll put some of this on a platter, we'll bag some of this up. You got your point here, your flat down below. We're gonna use this to make sandwiches and whatnot all week. Flavor is just awesome. It's plenty juicy, even though I overcooked it a little bit. Really recommend that beef tallow step. Some folks do chicken stock too. I wouldn't. I know I don't know. It's a salty, fatty mess, but that's what you signed up for, so you may as well jump in head first. Overall, there's just nothing like making your own barbecue. This was an incredibly long night. We're both exhausted. It smells like fucking barbecue in this house. It's dirty everywhere. I got grease on the cloth seats here, so we're gonna have to figure that out.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe. But it was really fun. I hope that this is a helpful tutorial as you embark on your own Smokey Weber smoking grill adventures. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So I hope you enjoy. Love you guys. Proud of you. Bye.